I'm Tim Stalker, and want to welcome you today to um, our program, which is the Decision Tree Probability Analysis as a Lit Management Tool.
I'm Ryan Nolan. I'm an associate and work with Tim in the insurance group as well as the general liability group.
So what is a decision tree? A decision tree really has many names, but it's basically a tree-shaped schematic diagram used to predict um, with statistical probability the potential outcome in our instances of litigation. Um, the Society of Actuaries call it predictive modeling, and it is to a large extent predictive modeling if you use it over numerous cases and over the same claim types over and over again. Just to give you just a brief history from my background. The first time I was exposed to the decision tree was around 1990 when a gentleman by the name of Mark Victor presented it to me and to the senior claim staff at Crum and Foster. And at that time, I was responsible for approximately 400 declaratory judgment actions throughout the United States, and we had environmental and asbestos reserves of about $2 to $3 billion with respect to the Crum and Foster companies. When I first was exposed to it, I said, you know what? Now, I've got like 20 years of claim experience at this point. I think that I can reserve and ask for settlement authority based upon my background as well as Mr. Victor's program predicts. But what I found was that uh, about a year later, based upon some presentations by outside counsel, that their verbal description of cases versus getting a probability range on potential outcomes was much less favorable than having them put a decision tree together. And one quick example was in an environmental case where the demand was about $18 million. Outside counsel was looking for 12 million to settle, and when we went through the probabilities, the case was only worth about 10% of what defense counsel was requesting for authority, and the case eventually settled within that $1.2 million probability analysis. So that converted me to utilize over the years the decision tree as a predictive modeling for litigation.
All right, and the decision tree can be used in all sorts of arenas: in litigation, non-litigation, coverage and defense, bad faith, bodily injury, environmental claims, errors and omissions, faulty construction, products liability, and reinsurance. So it can be used in a wide variety of claims, and it's not just limited to the claim Tim just referenced where it's a large environmental loss. It really has legs and can be used in a variety of ways. The advantages of the decision making tree are it allows you to put a probability analysis to the strength and weaknesses of your claim, and more importantly, it allows risk professionals to place an accurate reserve that's based on the probability of
and outline the various exposures. You have the ability to interact with them with respect to discovery, with respect to retaining experts, and also with respect to making sure that you are on the same page with with your defense counsel. Um, as I mentioned a few moments ago, you don't want the demand for a trial, and it was a multi-million-dollar case. And as Ryan has indicated, due to the decision tree, it doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar case. So a counsel came in to present the case to us, and at one point during the presentation, he indicated that there was a good chance of success on the case. So I let him go a little bit further, and then I finally said, well, you said there's a good chance of success. What does that mean to you? And he indicated, well, good chance of success is about 40 to 45% chance of success. And I looked at myself, and I said, well, I don't consider that a good chance of success. I consider that maybe a bad chance of success. The only thing trying to indicate that words mean. So the other benefits of success here, let's try the case. It also allows management to understand the basis of reserve and requests for settlement authority. They see the layout, they see the numbers, and it allows them on a summary basis to understand why you're establishing the reserve you're establishing or why you're requesting settlement authority. And it also provides the basis of a negotiation strategy. That kind of evolved for me over the years. As I would put the probability analysis together to request a settlement authority, I realized that it also outlined for me the basis to negotiate a settlement. And let's say there are 4 or 5 potential outcomes. It provided me a basis to go out and resolve matters, not only with the other side, but with mediators. The decision tree comes in many forms. This is one format. You can buy decision tree or probability formats online. All you have to do is Google decision.
You have your defense counsels told you that you have comparative negligent venue where 50% or more bars recovery. Your defense counsels also indicated to you that there's a 40% chance the plaintiff will recover on the following basis: a 10% chance of recovering $700,000, a 35% chance. The first piece of information was that you're in a venue where 50% more bars recovery. So if there's a 40% chance that plaintiff's counsel will recover, then there's a 60% chance that they will not recover. So that's where we get that first line, 60%. And there's a 60% chance that there will get a 0 verdict. The second part is the 40% recovery. So that's the places where a plaintiff would recover. And your defense counsel told you a 10% chance of $700,000, 35% chance of $550,000, and so on. So what you will do here is you'll take your 40% and you'll multiply that times your 10% times the likelihood, 700,000, and that gives you a value of 28,000, meaning there is a chance that plaintiff would get a recovery of 28,000. So now you go through each stem here of your decision-making tree, 40% times 35% times 550, and that's going to give you that 77. The second to last line, 40% times your 40% of $300,000 recovery gives you 48. And the final line would be 40% times your 15% of $100,000 recovery, and that gives you 6,000. Now if you add up these 5 numbers, you will get 159,000, meaning that when you apply the probability of plaintiff's likely successes, your risk, your reserve should be about 159,000. So full circle, going to the original question here, it was the 150,000 reserve a accurate reserve? And here you might want to come up to 160 because you've calculated the risk to be 159,000, and whether or not to give defense counsel that $200,000 to settle. Based on our analysis, when you look at the risk, we would say no, confident that we will prevail at trial, and rather than being tied down to those words, press your defense counsel and ask them, well, you feel very confident. Can you put a percentage to that? And if they're not willing to put just one percentage, ask for a range. What is the range where we get hit at trial with a verdict more than 500,000? And on the flip, what's the range that we get a trial verdict of less than 100,000? And once you are able to get that percentage from defense counsel, you can then go through this whole probability analysis. And this isn't just limited to the outcomes with verdicts, but it can also be pressing counsel with the likelihood of success of a motion for summary judgment or any other pending motion that may get you dismissed from a case. It can come into play when you're evaluating motions for transferring a venue. So it's really not just limited to verdict settlements, and this one was pretty straightforward because you had a 60-40 percentage. But what this allows you to do is take the words that you receive from defense counsel in those lofty reports and really pin down with some accuracy what the settlement range should be and what your reserve should be. And it also allows you to further document your file when you're going either up to your supervisors or in a worst case scenario if your notes were ever obtained in a bad faith action. It shows what you were doing from a mathematical standpoint and from a certainty standpoint in assessing and getting your reserves ready, and then when you're evaluating settlement.
Just to follow up briefly with what Ryan indicated, if you, with the slide in front of you, the decision tree has two main branches. That's the no recovery and the recovery branch, and then under the recovery branch there are four sub branches. As Ryan indicated, this is a very simple decision tree, and it can be utilized with multiple branches. At some point, you don't want to make it too complicated, but again, this is a very basic decision tree. Okay. We also provided a second hypothetical. This is slightly more complicated, but it is still a very basic probability analysis. And here in the second hypothetical, there's a 3-car accident in a construction zone, and driver 1 was proceeding south on Route 1 in the left lane at 50 miles per hour through a posted work zone, trying to overtake driver 2. And as the slide indicates, driver 2 was proceeding south on Route 1 in the right lane at 35 miles per hour through the posted work zone. As driver 1 and driver 2 came to the intersection of Lincoln Street, driver 3 proceeded into the intersection from Lincoln Street, striking driver 2 on the right side and driving driver 2 into driver 1. Driver 1 loses control, turns over, and sustains injuries. The investigation to date indicates that traffic lights at the intersection were not functioning properly due to the work of your insured or your company, ABC Construction. ABC's defense counsel has evaluated the value of the injuries to be between $750,000 and $1 million if driver 1 makes a recovery. Again, Ryan mentioned a moment ago that many times you'll get a range from defense counsel, and we try to give you a hypothetical here with a range. And that range can be based upon the injury valuation, or a range can be based upon probabilities of success. So as we proceed through the slide, ABC's defense counsel also believes there's a 20% probability that driver 1 will be found to be 50% negligent or more, which will bar recovery. And if there is a recovery, ABC's defense counsel believes that there's an 80% chance that driver 1 recovers $750,000 and a 20% chance that driver 1 will recover $1 million. So more probable to recover $750,000 than to recover $1 million. So the analysis also indicates from defense counsel that if driver one is not found to be 50% negligent, the following assessments of negligence on each of the parties involved. Driver one, 30% negligent, driver two, 10%, driver three, 35%, and ABC Construction, 25%. ABC Defense Counsel requests $180,000 in authority. Will you grant that authority? Remember, when you do your probabilities, each branch has to add up to 100%. It's sometimes when that doesn't happen, you have to go back and have counsel change the percentage. Again, each branch has to add up to 100%.
And on that point, Tim, I think initially that's where you can tell if you have enough information from defense counsel. If you have the 20% chance of no recovery, that's easy, 80% chance of recovery. But you need that first percentage, and then you need the second percentage of the likely outcomes, and both need to add up to 100%. So when you begin, you should make sure you have two different sets of percentages and they both add up to 100%. That will allow you to know you have the information to go forward with the decision tree.
Okay, so as we work through the hypothetical, again, there's 20% chance of no recovery, and then there's 80% chance of a recovery. And then within that 80% chance of recovery times driver's assessed percentage of fault at 30%, and that equals 144,000. And we've worked through each of the parties involved, including driver two, which according to defense counsel has a 10% exposure, and that gives you a $48,000 value. And driver three, again, 80% chance of recovery, 80% chance of $750,000 being awarded, brings you to the $480,000 times the 35% comparative negligence equals $168,000. And finally, we get down to your insured or your company, and that's ABC. And again, you work through the same figures, 80% times 80% times the 750,000 value equals 480,000, and their assessed comparative of 25% equals 120,000. And if you add up all the numbers, they add up to 480,000, which is the branch value with respect to the probabilities of getting hit, or 750,000. So, but we're not finished with the analysis, because there's also within that 80% chance of recovery, a 20% chance that the plaintiff will recover $1 million. And as we did in the $750,000 branch, we worked through the $1 million branch with the same assessed percentages of comparative negligence for everyone, and 40,000, which is less than the request for authority by counsel. So if I were sitting there as the claims professional or risk manager, I'd probably grant defense counsel $150,000 in authority, but I certainly wouldn't grant them $180,000 in authority based upon the probability analysis. And when I said I would grant them $150,000 in authority, it's just that I just might. You don't have to grant counsel all of the authority based upon your probability analysis. This is for your own internal utilization.
Now, I think that's our last slide. Tim and I went through that rather quickly, but if you have additional questions, please feel free to ask us. The decision tree is an art, it's not a science, and it can work for every case. It's just pushing your defense counsel to give you those probabilities. It can take time to get used to where you put the numbers. A lot of the reports that you get from defense counsel probably have this information in it. They're just using words like very confident or more likely than not rather than putting percentages. And if you start to put percentages, you may find that your defense counsel's gut reaction or their first feeling about what a case is worth is accurate. It may also show you that it's usually off, and you can take that into consideration when you get the next request for settlement authority. But by putting numbers to what we already do every day, it really starts to protect yourself. It allows you to compare your claims and really know your risk that is there on each of the claims you have outstanding.
Yeah, and one final point. In the second hypothetical, we did a little bit more analysis than the first. And what we tried to show you in the second hypothetical was that we were putting value numbers with respect to all of the parties. So if you're involved in settlement discussions or if you're in a mediation, you can assess as you go through whether, for example, is driver one or driver one's carrier putting up sufficient money based upon driver one's exposure. So it also allows you to assess what the exposure is regarding not only the other parties, but also with respect to the plaintiff's comparative.
All right, well, that concludes our presentation. If you have any other questions or if you want to work through a decision tree on your own and you run into walls, just give us a call or shoot us an email and we'd be happy to go over anything with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.